Alright, in this lesson we'll explore more custom operations that are available with our DateOffset objects. So let's begin by re-executing our code to load our Google information as a data frame with a date-time index. And we'll preview the first three rows with head. We can see it right here. Now I've also included our current import code as it currently stands, and in a few moments we'll actually be adding an additional line of code here. I'll explain why in just a few seconds. But here we have our first three rows, and let's say I want to do a slightly more complex operation. So in the last lesson we did uniform things like add a certain number of days or hours or minutes or months or years, or perhaps do the reverse, subtract a certain number of months or days from all of these days. But what if we wanted something a little bit more custom? What if we wanted to round these dates to the closest end of the month, or the closest end of the quarter, or perhaps the start of the month or the start of the quarter? Each one of those operations is going to be different because each one of those dates is a different distance from that point. So we can't do something like add 10 days to each, because there's no way that we can have it merge on that common point as one date-time index. So we're going to have to be a little bit more clever. For that, Pandas offers us a new list of date offset methods that basically operate in the way that we want to. They round to a certain point. Now, these additional date offsets are hidden, sort of, in a custom module within Pandas, and I can show you how to access it right now. So if I begin with my PD library, we're familiar with this syntax right now. We place our dot, press our tab. There is an available module, or sort of like a subdirectory or folder within Pandas called T-Series, which is short for time series. There it is. Within this module, if I place a dot, we actually have another combination or group of folders or submodules, and I want this offsets module. Let's select that. And finally, I'm going to place another dot and press tab again to take a look at our options. And here we're going to see some of the available operations. So for example, we have this available month end method right here. And what that's going to do is basically pull in the end of the month for that present day. So I'm going to add a parentheses here. This is a method. And what I'm basically going to do is copy this code, just delete it for a second. I'm going to pull our date time index using the index attribute. And what I basically have to do here is the same thing that we did in the last lesson. I'm going to do plus, but instead of just doing pd.dateOffset, I'm going to paste that code we just wrote, and I'm basically going to apply this operation month end. So what it's going to do is look at the date and then find the next month end. So the reason it's doing that is because we placed a plus. So it's going to look for the next available month end. If we placed a minus, which we'll do in just a second, it's going to look for the last available month end. So for example, if I take a look at all of these values right here, they all fall in August. So it's going to look for the next available month end, which is going to be August 31st. So all of these date times are going to be rounded to 8/31/2004. Now this August 31st day right here falls on the end of the month. So you would think that it would say, oh, just keep it the same. Unfortunately, that's going to be crossing over the threshold that Pandas is looking for, since it's already basically on that date. So when Pandas is going to look for the next available month end for the actual date of August 31st, it's going to round to the next end of the month, which is going to be September 30th. So just keep in mind and pay attention to these values at the top, and we'll see that all of these are going to go to August 31st. So these are all of these date times that begin right here. This one has been rounded to 8/31. So is this, and so on and so forth. And now for that 8/31, it's rounded to the next available end of the month. And thus the process continues for every single value, every single timestamp within our date time index. Now we can do the process in reverse by doing a minus. So what this is going to do is look for the last available month end. In this case, all of the days in August are going to have a last available month. It's going to be the same one of July 31st, the previous end of the month. So you can see now all of our values in August are going to have the last available end of the month, and the same thing is going to apply for every single timestamp value within our data frame. And of course, to the month end method, we also have a complementary month begin method, which does the exact same thing. So if I do plus here, it's going to get me the next beginning of the next available month. So in this case, when we have August values, it's going to look for the next September values. You can see that all these values, including August 31st, are going to have the next available start of the month pull in as September 1st. Once we get into our September data, it's going to pull in the next available start of the month, which is going to be October 1st. Similarly, if I want the previous end of the month, or rather previous beginning of the month, I can do that, and it's going to pull in August 1st for all of these August values, and so on. So it takes a little bit of time to get used to, but the general logic should be pretty clear. But the reason that this isn't preferred by a lot of pandas enthusiasts, in fact it's not recommended by the documentation, is because this syntax can get pretty difficult to memorize and commit to memory. So what most people do and what pandas recommends is to actually add an additional import statement right here. And what we're going to do is import all of these available methods directly into our namespace. We're basically going to do exactly what we did here, where we imported the data module directly from the pandas data reader library into our namespace. You can see it being used right here. And whenever we do it directly into the namespace, we don't have to write the library name before it, or even its inner module. So we don't have to write pandas data reader.data. So if we import all of these methods like month begin, we don't have to write this prefix of pd.tseries.offsets before it, and that buys us a little bit of space. Now again, the drawback to using something like the from approach and importing directly into the namespace is that if you have two libraries and they both have similar module or method names, and certainly something like data may be common, there may be conflicts because Python is going to be unsure which method from which library you're referring to. But in these lessons, since we're sticking exclusively to pandas, we won't run into that issue. So I'm going to scroll up a bit here and write my new line of import code. I'm going to once again do from. And this time, think of it as looking from the outsider perspective. We haven't directly imported pandas at this point, so we're not looking at it from a PD perspective. Just think as if you're in the lobby of Python and you're selecting which libraries you want to use, and you still have to refer to pandas in its traditional pandas full name syntax. So from pandas dot, and then I'm basically going to write the exact same thing I have here. I'm going to reference that inner location within pandas, that directory or module kind of subdirectory structure. So I'm going to say from pandas tseries.offsets. So I've now navigated to that section of the pandas library. I want to import all of the available methods or objects that are available at that level directly into my namespace. Now in this case, in the line above, we only had one thing that we wanted to pull in, which is data. In this case, I want to import everything, which basically means pull in all of this available stuff. Here you can actually see all of those methods that are available within that submodule or subfolder within my pandas library. So in order to import everything within that layer into my namespace, I can use the asterisk symbol, which is right above the 8 on your keyboard. That's Shift 8. So now when I execute this, it used to be that we would write something like month end here. But now since this part has been directly imported into our namespace, we can remove all of this stuff before it. So now if I execute this code, we're going to get the exact same thing. We're going to get the end of the last available month. And now instead of writing that long syntax all the time, we can directly write all of these methods right now and get the results that we want. So let's take a look at some of the additional available options. So once again, I'll begin by doing stocks.index. There's our date time index as it currently stands. So we explored month end and month begin, as well as using plus to go forward to the next available one and minus to go back to the last available one. And there's also additional options available for business. So if you want business month end, that's going to get us the last available the next available day that falls, that's the end of the business month. So if it falls on a Saturday, it's no longer going to be valid. So in this case, when I execute, we're still going to get 8/31. That means that August 31st does not fall on a weekend, so it counts as a valid end of the business month. And similarly, if I want the end of the last available business month, we can do that. It's going to pull in 7/30. There is a complementary business month start, which is going to pull in the exact same thing, the last available start of the business month. If it falls on if the start of the month falls on a weekend, it's going to pull in the first Monday. If that's available in that month, it's going to pull in the first date. But we have all of these business options available for those who are working with business data and want to exclude weekends. Let's go back to our stocks.index option. And by the way, this red warning is basically just saying that it's non-vectorized, which means it's not sped up. It's not built internally for all of the super fast operations that Pandas is known for. You can basically ignore it. You can see that the result is working as expected. But there is our original date time index. And let's say we want to now take a look at the end of the quarter for each of these things. So if I do plus quarter end, there it is. This is going to pull in the next available end of each quarter. So you can see here that we're going to get September 30th. The August falls in the middle of Q3 of each year. Quarter 3 of a year is July, August, September. So you can see for each of these dates is going to pull in the next available quarter end, which is going to be September 30th. And if I do minus, it's going to pull in the last available quarter end, which is going to be the end of June. So you can see June 30th is going to populate for all of these values. That's the end of the previous quarter. Previous because we did minus, and the end of the quarter because we did quarter end. We, of course, have a complementary quarter start method. So if I do plus quarter begin, that's going to pull in the first available day of the next starting quarter. So there we have September 1st is the beginning of the next available quarter. If I pull in a minus sign instead, we're going to get the beginning of the last available quarter, which is June 1st. And of course, quarter end and quarter begin also have complementary B quarter end and B quarter begin methods for pulling in those business quarters and business quarter ends and business quarter beginnings. Let's do a couple more examples with years. So here I have my original index. My date times are present. Let's say I want to pull in the end of the year. I can do year end. So it's going to look forward because of that plus sign. It's going to find the next available end of the year, which is going to be the 31st of December for all of these values up until it gets to actually December 31st, 2004, in which case it's going to pull in December 31st, 2005, and so on and so forth. And of course, if I do minus, it's going to get the last available year end. So it's going to get the end of 2003 for all of these original values that occur in 2004. And of course, I have a complementary year begin method. So here's my original index. If I want to get the next available start of the year, I can do year begin. Remember, plus always moves us forward. So it's going to look at each date and say, when's the next available beginning of the year? That's going to be the January 1st, 2005. If I do minus, it's going to say go back, look to the past, and find the next available beginning of the year. That's going to be the start of 2004 for all of those dates that existed there. So, and of course, year begin and year end also have complementary B year begins and B year ends methods for doing the same thing for business years. So again, these methods are a little bit more complex, but they're used whenever you have to round to a specific point, perhaps the end of a quarter or the end of the month. And they're built so that they can recognize the distance of each day within your date time index and mold it to be in the right shape. It's much more complex than something like a manual operation, like just adding 10 days with the date offset method or subtracting 15 days. This one does a little bit more rounding, but takes care of all of the hard work for you. And again, to make this process simple by avoiding all that complex syntax, it's recommended by the Pandas documentation to include this additional line in your import to import all of those available methods directly into our namespace, so we don't have to write this prefix before we use any single one of them. So that's a little bit with our additional time series offsets that are used on date time indexes.